All right, so the future. Now, the first thing that I want to mention about the future is that there isn't really a future tense in English. So you might be thinking, well, how can you have a video about the future if there's no real future? So what I mean by that is that there's no special way to form verbs so that we talk about the future that the way that there is in some languages. The future is just a layer on top of one of the real simple tenses that exist. And that is the present simple and the past simple. The future in the present time is the future that we usually think about. So you could say, I will, let's do this, I am going to go to a performance tonight. So that's the future from now. But you could also say, I was going to go to a performance last night. And this would be the future from the past. So the future from some moment in the past. So yesterday, I had this future situation from then. And we can talk about both things. So you see, you can have the future in both times. It really is just a layer on each time period. All right, so this is a theoretical point that I like to make. You can think about it or not think about it. It does help for some things, for helping the future in the past. For example, understanding this. All right, so what are the really important things to understand and think about? That is the forms and the difference in meaning between those forms. All right, so what are the forms? Now, just so that we have all of them, I don't really consider this to be a future form, but we have present simple for the future. And that is when we say things like, the train arrives at 7:22 a.m. tomorrow. Let's just talk about all the forms first, then we'll talk about the meanings of the forms. So another one is just the present continuous plus some kind of scheduled time. So I am attending the meeting this afternoon. All right, by scheduled time, I just mean the time that is intended to happen. Now, why do we need this detail here? Well, because if we just say, I am attending the meeting, just present continuous by itself without this part out of it, then it sounds like it's happening right now. This use of the continuous, and that's not what we want. Another is the it's going to plus the verb. It's infinitive without to the verb. So no, that's how it is. So infinitive is the to plus verb simple noun form of the verb. All right, and so that's like I am going to attend the meeting this afternoon. Another form. Okay, and the last one is the one that you probably learned first, which is just will plus the infinitive without to again. So I think I'll attend that meeting. So those are all the ways to talk about the future. Now, what's the difference in meaning? Okay, now the present simple, this has to be some kind of scheduled, not scheduled, but scheduled, repeated scheduled event. So we had this example here, the train arrives at 7:22 a.m. tomorrow. Why does it fit? Why do we think that it fits to use the present simple here? Well, the reason that it fits to use the present simple here is because if you think about the concepts that we use when we thought about the difference between the present simple and the present continuous, we use the present simple versus the continuous when we talk about things that are not temporary. We use the continuous to talk about things that are temporary, and the simple when it isn't temporary, basically. All right, so the train probably has a schedule that it follows every day, or whatever, at some regular intervals. It's just a scheduled thing that we do not know the ending to. Okay, so that's the reason that I think that this really isn't the future that we're talking about here, but we do use this kind of construction to talk about future times. All right, now, what about the present continuous? Okay, so we're going to want to group present continuous and going to together, and think about the difference between these two and will. So let's look at some example sentences. Okay, so and we have these ones also. All right, so what is the difference in the meaning, the future meaning between these sentences and these ones here? Well, if you look closely, you'll see that in all of the ones that we have with will here, we're not really so sure that the thing is going to happen, and the thing is not the reason for that, we'll see, is that, or I'll tell you, is that these are not predetermined things. We don't know what's going to happen, and therefore it is not predetermined. If we look at the examples up here, what does predetermined mean before we look at these ones? Predetermined means that basically planned or decided in advance. So before what? Before it was spoken of, basically. So before the thing that is being talked about happening in the future, the thing that is being talked about happening in the future, that will happen in the future, is talked about, then it is pre-planned and predetermined, set somehow. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go on a trip next month. That means that you decided before that you were going to go on that trip, before you talked about it. Now, it could be that you decide right at some moment to take a trip. In that case, you'd say, I will, or probably we would say, I'll take a trip next month. Okay, going to plus time, as we talked about before over here. Sorry, not going to. In this case, going to. But present continuous plus scheduled time, as we talked about, is also for pre-planned, predetermined things. And will is basically just for everything else. So we have a few different scenarios where things will not be pre-planned or predetermined. Let's talk about those in a second. So this example, I'm going to attend a meeting in the afternoon. That would have been pre-planned. If you decided right at the moment, again, you could say I'll attend a meeting if it was not pre-planned. Same thing here, present continuous, also for pre-planned, predetermined things. So let's put this here. All right, so let's think about the cases. Cases where things are not predetermined, that you will likely see. I hope you recognize these cases. So one I mentioned a few times is you just decided that moment. So imagine there's a old lady carrying some bags up some stairs, and you say, here, I'll help you with that. Why I'll or I will? That's because there was no plan to do that before. You didn't know that you were going to find that woman on the stairs, and that she was going to have heavy bags with her. And so this was not a predetermined thing. It was a thing that was just decided right at that moment. When somebody volunteers for something, I'll handle that part of the project. For example, somebody volunteers to do that thing. This was not pre-planned, was not determined yet who was going to do that part of the project, and so that would fit and going to or not fit. Okay, what's another case? Another case is prediction. Prediction cannot be pre-planned because you don't know what's going to happen. Right? So I think that it will rain. It seems, well, no, this will also be a prediction. It seems like they will be late. This one, it looks like it will rain. That was a similar kind of idea to this. It's kind of prediction about the future. Since it's prediction about the future and we don't really know what's going to happen in the future, then these are not predetermined and we should use will. All right. Another case is maybe a little bit more interesting, and that is where the person who you're talking to has some control or power over whether the thing happens or not. All right, so a good example of that would be like a child and a parent. So a child will want to make plans, but the parent has responsibility for a child, so they can decide if the child really can do what they plan to do or not. So the child might plan to go to the park with their friends. So what will they say to their mom, for example? What will the child say to their mom? They will say, "Mom, I'll go to the park with my friends." Okay, why should she say I'll? Well, if she said I'm going to go, that would mean that this is a predetermined thing and that she has the power to make this kind of plan without hearing the opinion of her mother. And she might say this, but this would be an impolite thing to say for this reason. A similar thing will exist, I don't know, maybe in some relationships in a company. It's more polite and more fitting, really, to say I will in a lot of cases if the person who you're talking to might say that you shouldn't do that thing, whatever it is. In the case of the child, the mom might say you shouldn't go to the park because, well, whatever reason. The child needs to do homework or something. So again, this is another case where there are not predetermined plans for some reason. In this case, the plans can't really be made without the other person's approving of the plans. Okay, so these are the reasons that you'll see the most often that things will not be predetermined. There might be some others, but the idea will always be the same, that if the thing is pre-planned and predetermined, and can be, then you'll use either going to or present continuous plus time when the thing will happen. And if it is not pre-planned or cannot be pre-planned for some reason, these being the most common cases, then you will use will to form the future in those cases. All right, so thank you for watching my video.